Hi there. My name is Rebekah.
Rebekah the Ghost Guide here.
Rebekah the Ghost Guide here, and I work as a ghost tour guide in one of the most haunted cities in the southern United States, Wilmington, North Carolina. And if you've been following along with my other episodes, you'll already notice there's something different about this one. That's because every fourth episode I take to answer your questions. And I am here to answer one of the most frequently asked questions you have. How do you know if it's a ghost that's shown up in the photo or video that you've captured? Are there different kinds of ghosts? And if so, what are they? How to do a cleansing. Let's dive in.
So I have a dilemma. Remember at the beginning of the year when I was like, oh, I'm gonna start a YouTube channel and you're really gonna love it? Well, I did! Here's the dilemma. We're about halfway through the year. How did that happen? My computer, which otherwise was working before this year, is not able to keep up with the software that I'm using in order to edit all this footage, not to mention all of the footage on there. It's a really big problem. You may have noticed I was late in posting last night. 8 hours late to be exact. Most of that time was waiting for it to unfreeze. I've done a lot of things for this computer. I have an external hard drive. I regularly clean it out. I've been doing a lot of stuff. But the reality is, if I'm going to continue doing this, I'm going to need a new computer soon. So, if you don't got money to spare, but you do have extra time, please go over to my YouTube. Trust me, if you like my content here, you're gonna love it over there. And at no cost to you. Please help.
How do you know if it's a ghost that's shown up in the photo or video that you've captured? So I'm going to tell you some of the most common ways that ghosts show up in film. Personally, the most common way that I've seen ghosts show up in film is through things that are called orbs. They're little balls of light, understood to be reflections of the soul, not reflections of lights that you and I can see from a light bulb. Most common colors that we see with orbs are white, but I've also commonly seen them in shades of light green and light blue. Sometimes they're really small, and other times they can be large and kind of transparent. And on a rare occasion, they may just look like a face. But that could be depending on what you see and how you see it. The next step up from an orb would be, honestly, what many people call different things. Some people call them zippers, some people call them vortexes. It depends on how thick they are sometimes. Me, I just call them moving orbs, and we've already seen one of those on my second episode outside of Bullock Hospital. But I also commonly see them at graveyards. Most commonly St. James Graveyard, where they seem to be popping up out of the ground. These can also be varying levels of transparency. I usually see them in white, but outside of the Bergen Wright House, for example, I see them in shades of blue and green. Fog is another common anomaly that we see on the tour and that many people also see in photos. Sometimes it's fog that'll sit right around the level of a tombstone, for example, out at St. James. Other times the fog can be billowing up to the sky. And some people will say that the fog is just in between and trying to take shape to look like the person that it's portraying. Oftentimes fog is seen in shades of white, but we've also seen it on the tour in shades of gray, green, and kind of a pinkish bronze. Another common occurrence are shadows or even full shadow figures. Some people will report seeing shadows just like you and I would see shadows in the sun, like what's behind me. Other people will report seeing shadows right in front of their face. So this could be something like the fog taking shape of a shadow, or maybe you're looking at a full-on anomaly. But some people believe that shadows may be spirits, whereas other people believe that they might be shadow people which may have never lived and died. They're just existing, if you will. As I mentioned earlier, some people claim to see just the faces themselves, and those faces might be in the orbs I talked about. But they could also sometimes be levitating. And this is one of those things where you have to wonder, is it something truly spiritual, like a ghost or something or another? Or is it just our mind playing tricks on us? Either way, it does make for a very interesting photo. Reflections off of surfaces such as mirrors or even windows are also a great way to capture different anomalies. We've seen anything from faces to orbs to full-on apparitions, oftentimes looking out of very old windows. Something about reflective surfaces can sometimes capture how something appeared when it was alive and maybe open up that kind of gate to be able to see it when it's walking around, when it's passed on. This is why I always recommend to my tour groups, when at old homes or homes that you know are haunted, take photos of the mirrors, take photos of the windows. You never know what could be staring back at you. Lastly, and I'd venture to say the most rare, is when you see a full apparition. This is an apparition that has facial features, but not only facial features, but you might be able to see what they're wearing, what time period they came from. As I said, these are rare. If they happened all the time, I think we'd have a lot less skeptics out there in the world. So if you capture one of these photos, wow. Are there different kinds of ghosts? And if so, what are they? One thing that I want to be sure to cover before I go into this is that this particular episode is not going to be going into what happens after spirits move on from the earth. As in, I'm not going to be going into the concept of heaven or any other religious-based kind of concept. This is strictly for the energies that stay on Earth. That's not discounting any of anybody else's beliefs, but as those of you who follow me on TikTok will know, I do not get into my personal beliefs on what happens in the afterlife. There are energies that can be split into two main categories. The first category being those spirits, those souls, and I say souls, that have actually lived on the mortal plane and died. Category number two are energies themselves. So these are not souls that have lived and died, these are energies. So we have souls and we have energies. Going into those who have lived and died, I break these up into subcategories. For example, a kind of spirit that isn't particularly powerful, but does have a replay effect, that would be a residual energy. A residual energy or residual haunting is a kind of haunting that is expected. Like for example, a friend of mine, they used to live in a house where every morning at 7 a.m. they would actually hear someone going up their stairs. They could count on it almost like clockwork. Another thing that this might be is a clock actually stopping. Or if you always see something like the way that a person died. Some people actually see the way that somebody died in their home. That could very well be a residual haunting. These hauntings are understood to be more like a stain or a scar on a location. You can't necessarily talk to them or interact with them. You might feel their presence, you might feel that emotion, and I'll get into that as far as energies are concerned, but they are just there until otherwise cleansed out. Another category would be the intelligent category. Intelligent, I put into two other subcategories. You have the intelligent spirit that you can regularly interact with that may not know that they're dead. For example, if say you move into a home where the last person who lived there maybe died of old age and they don't recognize that they have died, they're gonna be pretty upset when they start to recognize your presence. Now they might be really confused, for example, because they're not really gonna understand that somebody else has moved into their home because they're kind of on a different plane of energy at that point. But they're probably gonna try and move you out of the house because then they're thinking you're the ghost. And a really great example of this would be the movie The Others. Really do check that out. It's a really interesting perspective on who is the real ghost. Another form of an intelligent spirit would be those that know that they're dead. You can regularly interact with them. They may choose to like or not like you depending on how you live your life and how you interact with them. An intelligent ghost may be sticking around to look after a house, for example. One of my personal examples was we had the ghost of a woman in our previous home, and I think she was coming to understand that she was dead. There had been a few owners before us that had been there, but she was still very attached to her home. She didn't want to go. So those are the kinds of spirits you can interact with. Like, you can ask them things like, do you know where my keys are? You might be able to ask them to turn on a light or to interact with other technology. These are not clear-cut categories either. There may be a ghost who might think that they're still alive, but might not fully understand that. A good example would be if you've seen the movie The Sixth Sense. You have ghosts that are anywhere between not knowing that they're dead into understanding that they're dead, or ghosts that are still in that middle area of they get the idea that they are dead, but they're still actively trying to work as if in the mortal world. And then the next layer or category, as we're moving up in powerful spirits, so to speak, I call these ancestors or ancestor guardians or guides. With these ancestors, they are not attached to mortal things anymore. Rather, they are attached to people. It's not necessarily a bad thing. They may actually be blood kinship, or they may be kinship potentially through a soul bond. You may have someone who maybe you were going about your life, they were going about theirs in the spiritual realm, and something about you called them. They're not so much attached to a present thing as much as they are there for your assistance. Some people will call these spirit guides. Some people will call them guardians. Some people will call them ancestors. But they're just on a different plane. They recognize that they're dead. They know they've been dead for a while, and they're just around for our benefit. And when you think about that, that's really cool. It's the concept that we're never really alone. We've got so much support around us if we just open ourselves up to it. The next level that you would have are the really higher spirits. Some people will call these angels. Some people will call these Loa. These are spirits who may have served us as ancestors at one point in time and have just grown and grown and grown from there. So these are the really old spirits, all right? These spirits may protect over an entire family. They may protect over an entire town or a city, or even something larger. Some beliefs actually believe that there are spirits specifically for all little things. So there could be a spirit for this house, for example. There could be a spirit of my neighborhood. There could be a spirit of the town of Wilmington. There could be a spirit for the Cape Fear River. And these spirits, they're very, very high. They may have at some point lived and died and moved on, or they may kind of be a merge of energy along with that. These are deities, so to speak. They are more all-knowing and oftentimes understand more than we can comprehend. That's how high that they are. I've talked about those who have lived and died. Now we're going to talk about those who have not lived or died, those that are energies. The first form of this, and I think it is the most common, it's something called a thought form spirit or a thought form energy. And these have different tiers as well. If you've ever gone into a place and you just feel an emotion that you didn't already have, and you have no logical explanation of why you would have that emotion, that's a thought form spirit. These can work in a number of ways. For example, I was just out at Helen's Bridge in Asheville, North Carolina. There is a thought form spirit there. I think that the ghost is still there, but I also think the thought form spirit is there. Before I even got there, I felt sad. And it wasn't just me. My mom was with me. She felt sad as well. It was something we couldn't describe. And then we got to the bridge and we were like, That's it. That's the reason. You could have thought form spirits that are sad. You could have them that are angry. You could have them that are chaotic. You could also have positive ones as well. Some people will describe going into a place of worship or a monastery or a place of meditation, and they just feel peace. They feel light. That is another form of a thought form spirit. Thought form energies can also follow people. It kind of works the same way. If you're ever around somebody and they just give you a particular feeling, and it's not their body language, it's just something about them. And it could be happiness, but it could also be sadness. A way for you to kind of recognize that is if you start having emotions that aren't yours. And it's not as if were an empathic thing. It's not like anybody around you could be giving you that emotion. And you're having emotions that you may recognize are just a little off. If this is normal for you, then I wouldn't immediately go to the spiritual side. There is a whole psychological side that should really be looked at with any and all of this. I'm all for the science. I am all for the logistics. Look at that first. These thought form energies can follow people. They can permeate a space. They can permeate a person. I'm a big person on balance. Keep that balance up. You never want to be too much of one or the other, whether happy or sad. You always want to be as balanced as you possibly can be. And that's why regular cleansings and meditation and checking yourself for your own health, always keep that up. Another form of energies are what I call parasites. Parasites, they can work along with a thought form energy. They may be the reason for a thought form energy, for example, or a thought form energy could be the reason of them. Oftentimes when somebody's really down and out, that's when a parasite really likes to leech on. Parasite is an energy that eats off of you and your emotions and your life. Parasites are oftentimes attracted to people who are already having unfortunate problems. For example, depression. Depression, while it can be explained neurologically or it might be explained environmentally, can also be explained spiritually. These parasites want to latch on to people who are already feeling down and out. That's an easy target for them. Parasites enjoy sticking around places of burial because people who go to places of burial are oftentimes really sad. And oftentimes I get all kinds of comments and emails from people saying that they think something has followed them home from a burial site. That's why there's no trouble in going to a burial site so long as you're respectful. You've got to be sure to cleanse yourself. You don't want anything following you back and potentially making it worse for you. Next up, some people will call them demons. I personally do not like the phrasing. Modern day constructs it as like this super powerful figure. There are different tiers of these other beings, and not all of them are bad, and not all of them are completely bad. Not all of them are perceived as animals. Some people see goats, things like that. In my experience, I have seen different kinds of creatures that I don't think were ever living and dying as souls. Many different cultures have different names for these kinds of higher beings. These can permeate a larger space as well. They can exist near a person or influence a person directly or influence the space. They can also influence larger things as well, economics, politics. I think people are so generally afraid of being possessed by something. These higher level spirits are not often solely caught up with individuals like us. They may be influencing world leaders. They're not so interested in fully taking us, mainly because they have better things to do. If you're looking at a possession, I would say oftentimes you're looking at a parasite that something else has kind of popped in on. Maybe you're looking at a thought form energy. All of these things, they're all trying to feed. All energy is trying to find its own energy to connect with, to feed off of. Oftentimes, if you're having, say, a full-on possession, that's likely not one thing at play. And it's likely not something that happened immediately. These are things that happen over time. A person has to be worn down in order to be moved into, to be influenced that specifically, that greatly. The main thing that I'll say with all of these kinds of negative things, check yourself. Don't be afraid. Be upfront. Be honest with yourself. Be honest with one another. And don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to state your ground, to say, this is my life and you're not invited. The reality is that these energies, the ones who have not lived and died, can influence those who have lived and died. So, for example, I've dealt with ghosts who need to get to that next level of being removed from the mortal realm in order to therefore shed their negative thought form energies or their parasites from the mortal realm. Sometimes it's like with what happened with Helen's Bridge, you have a tragedy and then you have negative thought form energy that kind of live in that space. You may also have a person that was alive and they had all these energies attached to them and then they died, but those energies are kind of keeping them on the mortal plane. Sometimes you see spiritualists and mediums saying, you know, go to the light, move on, move on. And you might get the answer of, I can't, something's holding me back. And that can be a kind of energy. Sometimes it's a soul that's otherwise influenced. Souls want to move on unless there's a specific reason for them to stay behind. I cannot iterate this enough. For all of the negative out there, there's a balance of positive. It is just a matter of finding it and growing it. All of these things can be grown, and it's important to do your homework and to be good to yourself. Find your balance, live your life, be respectful of the dead on all tiers, and don't forget that you are important and that you matter throughout all of it.
I guess I should say I consider myself pretty good about categorizing things. Ghost stories are one thing. Experiencing ghosts and other spirits, it's one thing, but I do what I can to not make it personal. And I have to not make it personal because if I do, I wouldn't be able to cope. I get a lot of emails from people. I get a lot of comments, especially on TikTok, on Instagram, and some on YouTube. A lot of people who are in pain. A lot of people who need help, a lot of people who feel like they were robbed time with a being that they loved and they want to reach out to that being, right? And in order for me to cope with that, I have to kind of treat it like business. And this week in particular, business caught up with me. This week in particular, I was personally reacquainted with death. I was in the situation of I knew that it was coming, but it never makes it any easier. Just because I am more aware spiritually, being in tune with that which is around, even if it's not physically around, it doesn't make it easier. This episode, I'm going to be getting a bit more personal. I'm going to be acting a lot less. I'm not going to have that persona, so to speak. I'm just going to be speaking with you because somewhere along the line, my coping mechanism to be able to help others was to take that side of myself away. And so consider me adding that side of myself back. I want to show that I can be empathetic, that I can commiserate, and that I understand. And that I talk about these things with that persona and with that professional manner because that's my training, but the reality is still there. And so I'm going to walk you through the steps of what my immediate family has done this week to try and put someone to rest. And I hope that this may give you ideas. If you watch this, I hope that this will help you cope, and I hope that this will maybe even give a few people peace. I don't know, but here goes. We were given the gift of knowing Moby was headed out. It was not a surprise. And because we were given that gift, we made a number of choices on how to let that play out. For example, it came down to Moby making us decide for him when we would let go of him. His body was done. It was done for a little while now. After he stopped walking the second time, he stopped being able to do bodily functions. He started to go blind, but it was only last 2 days that he was alive that we recognized that as his body shut down, he was in pain. And that was a difference for us. I honestly feel, intuitively speaking, that he could have let go, and he would not. And that's a kind of love that I've never understood. I've never understood that somebody or something could be in so much pain and not let go. But I recognize it was us who had to make the decision. He was waiting. And before we went to the vet, we brought Mira and Roger out on the porch, and we left them with Moby to say goodbye. And we explained to them, we said, Moby's going to be freed from this form because it's not strong enough to hold him. It's not strong enough to hold his spirit, his soul. And this is the last time that you're going to see him like this. And it's funny, we personify animals, but I wonder, is it the personification or is it that spiritual understanding that we have with living beings? We allowed them to say goodbye, and then we went to the vet. Even with COVID, we took protective measures, but they let us be with him. We wouldn't have left him. Now, I'm not holding this against anybody. We are all in different places in our life, and we are all learning different things at different times. Your animal looks to you, and it's so incredibly hard to watch life leave from someone's eyes. But that is true love. There's a song from a band called Death Cab for Cutie, and it's a song called What Sarah Said, because all they can think about is one thing that Sarah said. And that one thing is, love is watching someone die. It is the most selfless thing that I think a person can do, because it's so hard. But I know in Moby's case, you watch that happen, and I remember it was very fast, and the vet said, he's gone. And I stopped crying because the sense of relief in the air was so much. It's like I felt his spirit in a form that was not of a cat, but just there. And I felt him say, thank you. We brought him home. Once we had buried him, we brought Mira out and we brought Roger out. But I brought him out and I held him and I crouched down next to where the box was that Moby was inside, and Mira was there too. And we explained to them, we said, this is where he is. And we were there with him until the end, and we told him over and over just how much we loved him, how we love him. So the last thing that he heard before he transitioned out of that body was how much we loved him and how appreciative we were for everything that he had done, and how if he wants to come back and see us, he can, but we understand if he has to go too. Love is letting go in that way. I'm actually going to show a video of how Jay prepared it, and it's part of the hoodoo and conjure tradition that he follows, as well as personal things. And it still fascinates me how so many different cultures have different ways of preparing their dead, and honestly, all of them right, because it comes from love.
For Moby, this was lovingly donated to us by a couple friends who knew him. 2 of his favorite toys, because it seems appropriate. Cinnamon is an activator. Help him kind of push things along, give him a little bit more juju to work with. If he wants to go, he can go. If he wants to hang around, he can hang around, but that helps him have a little bit more pep in his step. Water is the universal conductor. He wants to visit something he can not only drink from, but also kind of pass through with. Clove is an activator. It's also kind of a subtle heat, but it's more about protection, more about purity, keeping him away from things that can harm him. Eucalyptus around here as well. Eucalyptus is a really big purifier, helping him on the other side of things. Stay clean, stay safe, push things away that want to mess with him, feed on him, especially if he's going to come in and out. And the last thing is lemongrass, which you see not only in here, but sprinkled around. Lemongrass is luck. If he wants to transition, great. If he wants to stick around, great. It's completely his choice to do so, but lemongrass is opportunity. So if something better comes along, we want it to come along for him, and we want him to take it. There's lavender buried with him as well. Lavender is prosperity. All of this is, the whole point is symbolism, different aspects that we want to give to him during that transition on this side and the other, so we can stay healthy, stay safe, and stay loved. Even if he's no longer with us, there's no reason for any of the things that we did in life to stop once he's passed. So this is us giving to him after he's gone as well.
I get a lot of questions from people who have had pets move on or transition, as I like to say. And they ask, how do I know that they're okay? The answer, I believe, to that is the same way you would know they were okay in life. Pets don't speak to us the way that we speak to them. We have to pick up on context. We have to pick up on trust. And it's the same way. They're not in a physical form, but they still have emotions. They still have tendencies. They still can be exactly what they were, just free of their body. Even though I'm open to all of this spiritual stuff. The day after he passed, I kept hearing him. And I wonder, was it residual? Was it just the energy that he brought? How it still stuck around the house? Was it him? And as it's only been a few days, I don't know yet. I talk a lot about balance and that a person needs to be balanced in order to properly distinguish what they're dealing with. And I'm not balanced right now. So I can't tell you. Another tip I give to people when they're specifically dealing with animals, but it's very similar to what you would do with humans, is if you want to call to somebody's energy and they are still in an energy kind of thing, they haven't moved on to another life or something like that, we have to create an element and an environment that they would recognize. For a human, you might keep some of their clothing, you might use a perfume that they use, you might make some of their favorite food. And for a cat or an animal, why wouldn't you do the same thing? We have told him he can move on. We're learning to believe what we're saying. We've also invited him in a space where if he feels comfortable to stay, he's welcome to. It's what he wants to do. And it's us embracing that it's about him. We'll make do. There are ways that pets are closer to us, that they understand, that they see things that most humans are not conditioned to get. I think pets are connected on a spiritual side with us that we only wish that we could connect with most people on. They see us for who we are, and they accept us like that. The following is a eulogy that I wrote. Moby Dick, Moby the Great White Asshole, Mob, Bob, Moba Blobe, Big Guy, Big Moby, Fat Cat Moby, Kitty Brother Lover, Pet, Cat, Friend. I'll miss saying these names around the house. I'll miss hearing them more. I'm of the belief that pets are a gift we receive that teach us not only about unconditional love, but also about to give the thing we love and crave most, the same love, away. Movy's favorite place was on top of someone's clothing. It didn't matter if the someone had lived there for years or just happened to let their jacket drop somewhere. He would be on it. I think that says a lot about his relationship with Jay. Moby came into Jay's life when Jay needed someone to not give up on him. Jay needed to be loved for everything he was, especially when some of those parts were not seen or loved by others. Moby spent his life with Jay. Throughout that life, I came into the picture. I still remember adolescent Moby running around and bouncing off the walls. He had hardly grown into his brown Mao coat and was still mostly white then. Over the years, the duo of Jay and Moby grew to Jay, Moby, and Roger. Moby loved Roger so much. Maybe a little too much at times. They were inseparable. Moby turned out to be very gay. And he was the biggest gay bear of a cat I've ever known. Always proud and ready to show his gayness at any moment, usually in front of guests. I was next to join the family. It took no time at all for Moby to let Jay know that I wasn't Jay's companion, but his. And he shared me with Jay when he felt like it. Still, Moby never let anyone get between him and Jay. Mira was the last to join our immediate family. Moby was not a fan of her most of the time. However, over time, he would curl up next to her and even clean her face. She never stopped being terrified of him, and I think he liked the power he held over a dog 3 times his size. Moby had been very ill for about a month before his passing. After his first seizure, we didn't think he would make it a day, but he gave us indications he wasn't done with us yet. After more seizures, he eventually started to drink and eat and taught himself how to walk again, He began to adjust to the new normal, but over time, we could see that this new normal was not something he wanted. He wanted to lay on Jay, lay on clothing, lay in the sun on the porch, but to do that came so much effort in other places. He just didn't have it in him. He stuck around, he defied death to sit on Jay's lap a little longer, and to share the bed. But his body couldn't keep up with his spirit, and today we made the decision to free him from that pain. To the end, he never gave up on us. More specifically, he never gave up on Jay. The love that Moby had was immeasurable, and we know that in this transition, he will move on to exactly where he wants to go. He's always been stubborn like that. I feel that at some point we'll see him again, and he'll be shoving all of himself into our lives in the next life, just as he did in this one. Do not be sad for us. Rather, take stock in the ones in your life who live on, will alone, who will never give up on you, and have abundant love to give only when they choose to give it. That was Moby. We only mourn the form we grew accustomed to. His spirit is alive and well. The next phase of things to do at our house is to clean up. And we've still yet to do that. And the best thing to do would be to do it immediately. You want to cleanse the negative energy. You want the life to come back. So here's when I say, it's okay. It's okay to not be able to cleanse immediately. It's not fun. It's not a great atmosphere to be in. And it's not like we're going to keep it around. But it is what it is. All in all, this episode is about showing my humanity on this. And for those of you who will reach out to me in the future asking for guidance, this is what I'm going to send you. Because you need to know that what you're feeling is not just you. And just because I can give you a clinical, business-like response doesn't mean that I don't feel things. A number of people have commented, hey, I sent you an email a while ago. I know. Ghost stories are all fun and good until they're personal. I'm going to get better from this, but I am grieving right now, and that's okay. Thanks.
How to do a cleansing. Everybody may have a different way of cleansing themselves and their house, and let me tell you, that is entirely okay. And because of this, I wanted to have more opinions than just my own on the subject. And so for this particular episode, I'm going to take you step by step on not only what I do, but also going to interview other people who have different practices. Let's dive in.
Hi, I'm Ashley Paget. I have been a scholar practitioner of the woo-woo for about 16 years. I have a bachelor's degree in anthropology and a master's degree in anthropology. Lots of fun stuff.
I'm her husband, John. Also an anthropologist, coming way more from the historical perspective of the woo-woo kind of thing, less so a active practitioner.
My name is Jay. I am the owner of Old Southern Conjure, as well as co-host of Is It Real and How to Deal, and I am a conjure man.
I would classify myself as an eclectic pagan.
I do identify as a pagan, and an eclectic pagan is that.
Conjure is also known as hoodoo. It is practical.
My ritual practice is very based on Neolithic and Chalcolithic ritual practices, so I do a lot of work that is very similar to shamanism.
It is a spiritual practice that deals with the everyday kind of stuff everybody goes through. It's meant to accentuate, to grease the wheels.
I work with a few very specific deities from different pantheons because with my anthropology training, I've been exposed to a lot of different cultures. A lot of my other practices work with archetypal personalities and elemental energies.
Just for my own preferences, I tend to not put a lot into ritual. looking at it from like a historical, anthropological kind of perspective, a lot of times traditionally, people were using types of incense, whether that's like the Egyptian kaifi or sage.
Sage.
Occasionally I will use white sage, but it's not the end-all be-all. The most important thing behind a cleansing is your will and your intention. White sage is understood to be incredibly powerful, specifically for Native peoples of the Americas, because that is their will and their intention. That is the connection that they have. It's important to view these things as tools rather than to view them as anything magical. Really, we have all that we need within us. These are tools to help us visualize it in the physical realm.
Palo Santo.
Palo Santo.
Palo Santo is being over-harvested. Do your research, get references for where you're getting it. It is up to you to know if the area where they got it is being over-harvested or not. If it is, destroying a local ecosystem or not. Do your research. It's the same with white sage.
I imagine it would also affect the effectiveness of what you're using.
Exactly.
I feel like something has really gotten in that I don't want in my home. I will use dragon's blood incense.
If I have a cleansing that simply isn't going to work without something a bit more heavy duty, I'll reach for the Palo Santo.
I actually have made kaifi before, which is a resinous Egyptian, incense. Just had the idea of I'm putting this intent in hand there because I wanted to research it.
You can use any bundle. I've got a dragon's blood bundle here. I've got a cedar bundle.
Most of the herbs that you could use and conjure, you can find in your kitchen.
Different herbs will have different properties.
I also grow my own blue sage, lavender, and rosemary so that I can always harvest things humanitarily.
Of course, you could go online and find all the weird specific stuff, Solomon seal and deer tongue's root and five-finger grass and devil's shoestring, all kinds of things. But honestly, if you have a cinnamon stick, some cloves and some allspice and some salt in your kitchen, that's all you need.
What matters is the intent and the will that you put behind it.
It's whatever kind of resonates with you, because the idea is you're clearing the air, and that's kind of the basic, fundamental part of the house.
The fact that people have used different things all over the world, yes, these things have cleansing properties to them, but it really shows that central idea that where there's a will, there's a way. So if it is something that you invest in as a sign of cleansing, then it is going to work for you.
You can actually wave the incense over like a specific item, specific place.
I actually do make brooms. What I'll do is I'll take my broom and just use it to sweep the energy away. As a tool, as a vehicle of intent, it really helps in that way.
The combination of multiple elements to what some people say is raise the vibration, both within yourself but also within space.
And I'll go and I'll do that throughout my entire house.
Sometimes less fragrant things, heat.
One element will sometimes call to another higher than the other, but it's not to discount anything.
Yeah.
Something that smoke is the idea of the smoke, because it's clearing it out and you can blow it and that kind of stuff to blow the energy away.
There are quite a few simple things like cleansing baths that you can do if you have a bathtub. If you don't, you can do it in a shower. Something as simple as a sprinkle.
If it's not something that vibes with you, then you don't have to use it.
The whole point is that what matters to you is what you're comfortable with, that you want to use to clear that space. I am very fond of throwing open the windows because the idea that air gets stagnant. We all know that kind of musty feeling of a closed room. Throw the windows open, get some fresh air in there, because that's a physical sensation that you can tie into the metaphysical and kind of link those two together a little bit. I'm a big fan of kind of meshing that together. Tend to respond better to it when there's something physical I can tie to.
Get yourself in the shower, get yourself in the right headspace.
Maybe incense, music, just whatever can kind of get you in that headspace where you need to focus.
It's a lot about gaining or regaining control of a space.
A quick kind of thing is taking a bundle and, since using smoke, just kind of like as you would wash yourself, right?
Yeah.
Just move that smoke around you, get
We
somebody
used to
to get
call
your
it
back.
a bird bath. as a kid, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
you're not taking a full shower, but it's steamy out. You take a wet rag and just kind of wipe yourself down. The exact same idea you can do with any kind of smoking material.
Historical anthropological perspective, ritual cleansing tends to involve a lot of water. Water is obviously, we need it to live, so it's a great way to wash away everything. So it's not uncommon for a lot of cultures or practices to have some sort of ritual bath.
But once you're there, pour the stuff on top of your head and wash yourself from head to toe. Do that for 3 days and you're golden. It's as simple as it gets.
And you don't even have to do anything special to the water. Sometimes just the act of actually physically cleansing, again, is, also metaphysically cleansing
And
as
with
well.
the intention.
Right.
Right? Yeah.
You mix certain herbs together, you mix certain oils together. You boil it like you would a tea. You reserve the solids so you can use them later. But then you bless the water. Nice and simple.
Personally, I am a fan of bath bombs.
Bubbles.
Bubbles are fun. That's the idea. Make it fun for yourself too, because then you're getting more invested into it. And whether that's you want to light candles and set something up with that, with whatever tradition you follow, throw some Epsom salt in the water, whatever. It's whatever you feel comfortable with, so you can actually get in that headspace that you need to be. And it's working on self.
Now, that water is great because it's got a multitude of things. You can put it on the floor of your home for hardwood and wash your floors that way. You can use it to take a bit in your hands, sprinkle it on all 4 corners of each room, or just the house and some in the center, to do the exact same thing you would with salt to protect your home.
For this particular cleansing, I chose a bundle of blue sage and lavender. I purchased this from Madame Meerkatz in town, and it just felt right to me.
The biggest thing I've seen, and the thing I counsel people against the most, is when it comes to any kind of metaphysics, do not substitute metaphysics for basic human psychology.
I'm going to say it. Therapy.
Yeah, that's okay.
It's not a bad thing.
Honestly, that's what I was wanting to say, but I wasn't sure.
Therapy.
Therapy.
Good.
Yes. So honestly, I go to a therapist every 2 weeks, like clockwork. I see a counselor and I see a psychiatrist.
If you are not in a good headspace, if you are consistently not in a good headspace, there are things you can do, either with conjure or metaphysics in general, spirituality, that can help you get in a better space. But if those don't work, get help.
Talk to your counselor about it.
Yes.
And if they decide to take it from a psychoanalytical side, then listen to what they're saying, because the things that they're telling you can still be helpful to you, even if you feel very strongly that it is a metaphysical thing or attachment that is happening. But the more your counselor knows, the more they're going to be able to help you.
If you want to do this kind of work spiritually, you have to be in a good headspace mentally. That's as simple as it gets. And there's nothing wrong with admitting that I want to do this stuff, but I can't until I'm in a better space.
The one that I see, I was very open from the get-go. Let him know what my spiritual practice was. Let him know what my lifestyle is. And I happened to luck out that he was very energetically involved too.
There, especially with quarantine as well, there are so many options now available online that were not there before, that there's no excuse.
Talking is a form of releasing.
Yes.
Right? You're
Absolutely.
literally
Definitely.
thinking something and exhaling it.
When it comes to this kind of work as well, let's say you're making a brew. Each step you can make it as complicated a process or a simpler process as you want it, but the biggest thing is what you get out of it.
People have this fear, what if my therapist thinks I have schizophrenia? Well, okay, maybe, but there are ways to cope with that.
Yes.
You shouldn't be afraid of the diagnosis.
No.
If it helps you.
Never ever be afraid of the diagnosis, because as soon as you know what's going on, you can start to help yourself. Because that's really what a counselor does, is they give you a toolbox for you to help yourself.
It's what you choose to do with that time and the different steps of that process. For me, getting in that right headspace and then doing these small things honestly puts me in the right headspace of where I need to be.
People people should consider counselors and therapists, especially if they're coming from a background that otherwise does not believe in what they are experiencing.
Absolutely.
Yes. The cool thing about a counselor is that they really can't tell anyone else. So you're safe.
Somebody who is just going to listen to you rather than start going into a religious perspective or a personal standpoint.
They won't condemn you for your beliefs.
Right.
Right.
And if they do, find a new counselor.
There's really, if that now, you know, don't just jump from counselor to counselor because you don't like what you're hearing because it might be
You have
painful.
to build a relationship up with them. It's like making a new friend.
Yeah, but if there's like, just like with any relationship, physical, metaphysical, romantic, whatever, your relationship with your counselor should be a safe place. It should feel like a safe place where you are free to be yourself.
At the very least, too, it gives you the ability to kind of take a step back and analyze yourself and see what's really going on.
Yes.
So even if you feel it is a, you know, spiritual presence or something that's there, being able to take that step back, remove yourself from the situation and really look at it and kind of evaluate it is a really great tool that a therapist can really help with.
It took my health and my sanity to a much different realm.
Yeah.
You know, if I hadn't opened up, then I wouldn't have that.
Like if I'm making a cleansing bath like that, a sprinkle, it puts me in the right headspace where if I were to hop in the shower and then use it, it does its job the way it's intended. It's how you separate these things cognitively, emotionally, and spiritually in a way that makes sense for you.
In my practice, the first thing that I do before I cleanse my space is to make sure that I am as cleansed personally as I can be. So that means being in the right headspace. That means being at balance, being at peace, whatever that might mean to you. In order to achieve this, for me, what works is meditation and imagination, to be honest. I follow the Quaker practice of what is called centering, which is creating a space of balance, a space of safety, and a space that allows for good intention work. Once I'm in a good space, I'll actually start going around my house and doing the actual cleansing. First thing that I do is I go around and open up all of my windows that can be opened, as well as my doors. One of the reasons why I love this house so much is that we have really great screened windows and doors that allow for free-flowing air. It also works in my favor on this particular day because it's under Tropical Storm Bertha. And I actually love cleansing right before a storm comes in because the energy of the storm and the air of the storm carry the energy out. It's like a big kind of suction that the earth provides, and I love taking advantage of that energy. Every storm has a bit different energy from the last, but I like this one.
What I do is, especially on a nice day, I'll throw open all the windows. I'll put on music that I feel reflects me, light some incense.
Physically clean your space first.
Physically clean my home.
Literally clean the house. Just like there is spiritual dust, you've got to get the physical dust out too.
If you need to get your space clean spiritually, you can't do that until the physical clutter is gone.
A lot can be said about really ordering your space because many times the space that we live in is a reflection of kind of what's going on up here.
Physical clutter also has a really bad way of indicating spiritual clutter.
That can get in the way of the energetic work that you want to perform on your home.
Physical and spiritual work hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. You've got to create that balance. And so this is me sweeping stuff out the door. I love having laminate floors. It makes absolute sense to me, and it allows me to get in the space of being prepared to push things out spiritually. So imagine this is in a physical form of what I am about to do spiritually.
Where spatially everything feels correct in the material world, then I will take that incense that I've lit and go through each area of my house and see if anything feels stuck. You know, I kind of put my feelers out.
From there, I start in the back of the home. This is my back door. If you do not have a back door, you can start from a back window. If you have a multi-story house, I would recommend starting from the top and working your way down, or perhaps starting from the basement, work your way up, then go up to the top and then work your way down. Get everything centered on the main floor so that you can push it out. As I stand at the back door, you'll see me make a cross. I start from the very top, go all the way down to the bottom, and then cross it on the side. Some of you may take this as a Christian symbol. I take this as not only a Christian symbol, but also a symbol that is ancient in its meaning, a cross that holds itself up. This, for me, allows for there to be a kind of barrier on the home for the intention, but also allows open space for me to push negative energy out and around it. Think of it kind of like a two-way mirror. So I make that cross, and as I'm doing this also in my head, and sometimes I say it out loud, sometimes I say it in my head, I am stating the intention of why I am doing this. Typically for my house, I create an intention of the house itself being a place of balance, of peace, basically of good vibes. I create a space where those vibes help to balance with the negativity that is going to come in at some point or another, because that is what balance is, right? I cross it, I line each side of the door or frame it, and then I seal it with a circle. That's 3 circles. I just like the number 3. It just makes sense to me. And that's me sealing my intention. That's not me sealing the door from anything that wants to remove itself. That's only me sealing it from anything that might want to come in that does not have the consent and goodwill of the household. You'll see me do this for every window as well, and I'll end it with a push. So it's me pushing out what I will not allow within the home, but it's also taking in anything that will help the house and home to be better. From there, I go clockwise around each room and I work my way up. For this particular video, you're only gonna see a few rooms in the house because otherwise it would take a very long time. Moving all the way up, going down the hall, moving all the way up, and you'll see.
Now, once that's clean though, there are a bunch of different things you could use. I talked about that sprinkle. You could use the sprinkle the same way other people would use sage or smudging. You could sprinkle that on all 4 corners of each room or the house, like I said. Some in the center, you create that kind of clean space.
The kitchen, for example, I'm opening all of the cabinets. That's because that's space in there too. You don't want anything harboring there. Think of this as a deep clean, right? You want to get everything up and moving. You want to raise that vibration so that you can shake out the dust and push that dust out. Here I am going clockwise around the room again, stating my intention over every window, only allowing good things to come in. Another thing that I do as I go through is, just as I might scrub a floor or scrub a tabletop, I'm imagining in my mind scrubbing any gray gook or black gook or just any kind of color that doesn't mesh well with what I want in the home. I imagine scrubbing that away with the smoke that I'm using. And there have been times when I have not had access to a bundle, and so I charge up my inner core, so to speak, a bit more, and I will use my hand to scrub. And I don't have to touch anything. It is a spiritual thing. It is putting that energy out and using that of its own. And that's why I say all of these items that you can use are tools. That's why you can use smoke, you can use literal cleaner, you can use a liquid base or a dirt base, whatever works for you, because the power and the will come from you or come from your higher being. Whatever it is that you believe in that gives you strength, will, power, balance, peace, you name it.
You would use the Palo Santo, or the smoking element, as it were, cover the entirety of a room. Windows open, doors open, cover the entirety of a room, you smoke it out, but the biggest thing is your intention. It's how you set it. Again, that practical aspect. For me, it's not any of this like, I want it to be this and I want it to be this. It's a very simple matter of, this is my home. Anything I didn't personally make or invite, get out. Doors open. You empty that space. But the most important thing to do after you empty a space, nature and spirit abhors a vacuum. So, if I smoke out a room, great. But now it's empty. And anything could just come wandering back in.
Finally, I end it at the front door, and I actively push out whatever dust, so to speak, that I have found, and allow for any good intentions, for any good things for the household, allow them entry and consent if they do come.
Is take some salt, any salt will do, and make a line either on the windowsill or the bottom of the door. That way, you can close the windows on top of it, you can close the door past it. The salt acts as a last line of defense, as a wall in through your entryway. It is important to fill it afterwards. Something as simple as lighting a tea candle, lighting some incense that may be geared towards what you want it to do. Even as simple as turning on the light to the room, leaving it on for a little bit, fills the space. It sets that intention in stone for what you want to do. I would do that for the whole house. Once I was done, I would cross the doors with the smoke in my hand, and I would take a little bit of that ash from the Palo Santo. It burns, it's a resinous wood, and I would do the same. I'd put a little cross at the top of the door or the window. With conjure and a lot of other practices, there is a habit of, if you're going to use a candle for something, you have to condition it. You have to get it set and ready to go for what you want. Take, however, a bit of oil. Conditioning oils, I've mentioned it a couple times. Conditioning oils are very specific oils that you can make or purchase that have herbs, roots, nuts, curios, very specific things with specific properties that, again, same with sigil work. You're taking all these separate ideas, but putting them into a cohesive whole for a specific purpose. You can use some of the conditioning oils to anoint or dress your candles. It helps kind of build it together. But the last thing you do, you tap it down. It's you called knocking the candle. You are sending that intention in. You use that to fill the space. The whole idea is practicality, right? And with a very practical, pragmatic sense of how life works, nothing comes for free. The idea of, I light this candle and then it's all going to come true, does not exist in conjure. You would light a candle to help. You know, if your life is a machine, the wheels got to turn. Conjure helps to grease the wheels, but you still have to turn it.
Mm-hmm. And literally, you can imagine it, the light lights up an area.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's what we mean by filling, but
Yeah.
there's the metaphysical element as well.
Yeah.
Or going around and lighting incense. I love incense, and I love the smell that it leaves behind. It's that physical smell that reminds you of the spiritual cleansing that took place. We talked about a number of things that are for purchase that you sell to assist other people who maybe aren't so much into making their own stuff. Say somebody is a newbie at this, but they're like, oh, I feel brooms calling to me. Could they maybe get a broom from you?
Yes, they could.
You maybe have a website where I could link up for
I
the
do!
goodies.
It is called Hellebore Brooms. I have an Instagram, which is probably going to be the easiest way to get to me.
I will link it.
I am both on Facebook and Etsy as far as selling product. You can always get in touch with me as well to commission something specifically for you.
There are 5% off coupons to your store on our Patreon, as
Yes,
well
there
as
is.
10% off coupons to your store on Patreon for a higher tier. Any woo-woo things you want to share with us?
No, I'm a boring HR guy, so yeah. I do paperwork all day.
Yay!
Yay!
We need paperwork, people!
Paperwork!
Jay, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
This is fun.
All right. Well, excellent. That answers all my
Alright.
questions. Thank you so much for being on the
Absolutely,
show.
thank you.
That's it. I hope that you know. I want to hear what works for you. And thank you so much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed this episode. I cannot thank you enough.
Thanks for watching.
I hope that you have enjoyed this special episode. Comment down below. If you've been commenting, be sure to subscribe. I love to hear from all of you. Thank you again.
The next episode, when it comes out, won't be like this.
I'm Rebekah, the Ghost Guide. Check you next week.